Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it shared here on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your cryptid and UFO experiences, so reach out to me and let's get yours on the next episode of Uncomfortable. If you haven't yet, make sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. And once you've had a chance to listen to an episode or two, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. That alone is the most important thing you can do as a listener to help get this show out in front of more people. And with more people listening, you guessed it, that means more great experiences coming your way. If video is more your thing, then make sure to subscribe to Uncomfortable Podcast on YouTube, where you can get the video version of many shows. If that's where you choose to listen to us, please make sure to click like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you are notified with each and every new release. Take a minute to check out the Uncomfortable link tree. It is the single best place to find anything and everything uncomfortable all in one spot. The link for that will be in the show notes below. As promised, at the end of our last episode on the Rome, Ohio events back in 1981, I've got more for you on this. By way of a researcher, fairly local to the area, he and another investigator, on somewhat of a slightly calculated whim, went off in search of the Night Siege author, Dennis Pilichis. What they found may surprise you, and it adds an even more disturbing layer to this already crazy series of events. So if you're ready, let's get into it. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, Don Keating. Don, you may recognize his name from episode not too awful long ago. Towards the end of the summer, Don was putting on the 25th Bigfoot Conference over in Newcomerstown, Ohio. I went to that in support of the show. I was a vendor there at the show. Great show. We had John Hickenbottom was one of the speakers. We had Small Town Monsters, Seth Breedlove was there, did a great job. Don was up there talking, and I forget the third gentleman. Right off the top of my head, I can't remember what his name was, but he again did a wonderful job. But in conversations with Mr. Keating, who we have on the phone tonight, we had talked about an event from 1981 in Rome, Ohio, which was fairly local to where Don resides. And it was, I've heard of it prior, but I never really delved too much into it, so I didn't know all the little idiosyncrasies about this. I think at the time, Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at the time that we talked the first time about this, Pilichis, his book, Night Siege, the Northern Ohio UFO Creature Invasion, I think was out of print. And
that's correct.
And now, by some stretch of reality, I went on Amazon and I found that it was actually available. Not cheap. It's I think roughly 40 pages. I ordered it and it came to me. I ordered it on January 22nd. It arrived and printed on the back of the inside cover said made in the United States, Cleveland, Ohio, January 23rd, 2026. So this was, whoever is producing this is producing it. And the only reason I know this is because I work for a print shop. It was made by Print on Demand. So it was literally produced the day after I placed the order on Amazon. And for all intents and purposes, I would have to say that this was probably just custom made for that one order, which in itself kind of makes it cool. It wasn't the original when it was released, but everything is in it. It's concise. It's got the foreword by Berthold Schwartz, MD. It's got an introduction, and to my knowledge, it's got a very full and concise book of field notes, basically, is how it reads, of Dennis's experiences during this 1981 flap of high strangeness. So we got Don here, and Don has spent several hours with Dennis Pilichis, who was the author of this. And in my conversations with Don, he has said that those were 3 of the most intriguing hours of his life. So Don, welcome to Uncomfortable again. Good to have you back.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And listen, I tell you, when I read Night Siege, what struck me, see, and I don't know how well known this story is to many people. I know that it's been out there, and it's been out there for, obviously since 1981, but I don't know that it has really got its way into the masses. It may have. I could be completely wrong, but it struck me that the field notes and everything that are in this book, by the end of it, it struck me as it wasn't just about the sightings. It felt more like these guys, Pilichis and the obviously the family that owned the farm that all this stuff was taking place on, but the 5 or 6 other people mentioned in the book, as far as researchers that had gone to that property, many of which were there during some of the experiences and witnessed them firsthand, from what I can tell. It felt like these guys were living in some kind of a ongoing bubble, almost like the property had some weird personality of its own.
It was most definitely a series of events that took place from June of 81 through, I believe, the end of September or early October, thereabouts, of 1981. For Ohio, it ranks up there with the Minerva Monster as being really, bizarre. The Minerva Monster incidents they had a different tone of strangeness to themselves because of the incidents that took place with the family. This series of incidents in Rome had a tone of strangeness due to the fact that not only were these people on a regular basis seeing Sasquatch or Bigfoot type creatures, and these 3-toed tracks continued to be discovered that were around 14 inches in length, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And normally if you go hunting and you take a gun with you and you shoot at your prey and it drops, it dies. It's gone. It's done. It's dead. These people shot at these things, and I hesitate to use the term point blank, but they were within 100 feet many times when they shot at these entities as they seen them approaching the property on numerous evenings overnight. And nothing happened. There was no blood found. There was no fur or hair found. There was no deceased Squatch lying in some farmer's cornfield 100 yards away. Nothing happened, besides the fact that a shot was taken at the entity, the creature, whatever you choose to call it. And with that type of a thing that happens, and the prey does not fall prey to a shotgun blast, relatively close range, and I don't know of anything that's flesh and blood that's not going to fall prey to the shotgun blast close up, then you're definitely on a realm of Believe it or not.
Well,
As the old,
that's a great point. Now, something that popped out at me in reading these field notes, much like you're saying, several shots were fired at these entities multiple times throughout the course of this event taking place across the summer. And if there was any kind of effect from the gunshot, it seemed to be nothing more than they would witness that whatever the entity or creature was that they shot at typically seemed to drop to the ground and then scurry away.
yeah.
Now, the other interesting thing was that you talk about the three-toed prints, but there were also 17-inch five-toed prints that were found in the area.
Right.
So we had, I mean, this book, this set of field notes. I mean, again, I can't stress enough that this was 1981. All right, so flying saucers, science fiction movies, a couple of Bigfoot type movies have been out. But like when you take in the entire encompassing high strangeness that was going on at this farm, at this property, when I say that we've got entities that are leaving three-toed prints and five-toed prints, that doesn't even begin to cover the mass of high strangeness that was going on at this time.
That's for sure. That's a major understatement.
Now, you spent time with Dennis, the author.
Right.
I guess, what did you take away from that, you said, roughly 3-hour convening with him? What were you able to take away from?
Yeah, let me tell you how the whole thing transpired, how it took place. Myself and another researcher from Northeast Ohio, he lived in Twinsburg. His name was Mark Francis. And I believe it was during March of 1986, but don't hold me to that. He lives in Twinsburg, or did live in Twinsburg. I lived in New Cumberstown, as I do now. And so Twinsburg from New Cumberstown is about a 2-hour drive northeast. Then you go from I looked at the map and I'm like, Twinsburg to Rome, man, a piece of cake. It's an hour long. Wrong is about 2 hours. We found that out the hard way. But I get up there to Mark's and I say, you want to go see if we can find Pilichis, talk to him about this stuff that's allegedly. Now, remember, I'm talking to Francis in March of 86. So this is literally less than 5 years after these incidents had allegedly taken place in the summer of 81. Okay, so it's relatively new. So, okay, let's go ahead and ride on up there. All right. Well, first thing was we have no phone number for Dennis Pilichis. Number two, we have no address for Dennis Pilichis. And number three, if you look at a map, Rome, Ohio, and Ashtabula County, northeast part of the state, is a dot. And that's about it. So we're taking a real shot in the dark here that we're even going to find the proper home for him to begin with. Does he live by himself? Is he married? Does he have, who knows? So we get up to Rome and we stop at a gas station, get something to drink. We say, hey, we're researchers. I'm kind of curious as to whether or not we can find the whereabouts of one Dennis Pilichis. We'd like to talk to him about the incidents that took place there a while back. And lo and behold, they were, first off, you're at their mercy. Are they going to give you a wild goose chase and you're going to be chasing your tail and you never
Right.
find the place? But no, we were given good information and we found the house. So this is where the bizarreness begins. Okay. Now, I don't know if you know who Mark Francis is, or the listeners, if any of them know who Mark Francis is. Mark is an individual who has long hair. He was a rock and roll wannabe. He wanted to go out there and play heavy metal or whatever, rock music. So he had the typical long hair like Van Halen and all them did back in the 80s. So I'm 2/3 of the way bald at the time, and he's got long hair. What a duo to come knocking on your door. We knocked on the door, and we're like, there's lights inside, but there's nobody home. So we knock again, and this guy comes to the door. And he looks at us like we both have three eyes. and he's like standing there stone cold, not saying a word. And I'm like, okay, this is awkward. Your turn. So I introduced myself and told him who Mark was. And I said, we're paranormal investigators. We investigate UFOs or Bigfoot sightings. And we had heard about the incidents, and we're quite serious. I live 4 hours away, and Mark lives 2 hours to the southwest of here. And we'd like to know if we could talk to you about what all happened and what all you were involved in. Mm-hmm. And he's still standing there looking at us like, you guys are just off the wrong UFO here. Get out of my property. But he finally says, yeah, come on in, come on in, have a seat. Now, Dennis was renting a part of the property that his parents had lived on. So he was like living in a side portion of the house, and his parents lived in the main part of the house. No big deal, but it's for the record, that's where he was living. And he was a very nice individual once you gained his trust that you weren't there to make fun of him and call him every name in the book besides cuckoo.
Yeah.
So we are there, we're talking to him, and
he seemed very grounded, practical.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, too grounded at first, because we're like, where's the Louisville Slugger? Who's going to get belted first? Okay. We're up there without a calling card. We pop in on this guy, and it was not too far from sunset at the time, and he could have easily said, I'm done with it. I'm out of it. I don't really have any intent on talking about it. Thanks for coming up, but have a nice day and take off, eh? Mm-hmm. But he didn't. He seemed a relatively pleasant individual once we got inside the house and started talking to him. The one thing that I regret is the fact that I didn't have a tape recorder with me and recorded the entire conversation. So I'm going by memory from, it'd be 40 years ago this year.
Yeah.
So I'm going by memory on this. So we get in the house and we start talking to him about idle chit chat. Here's how Mark got involved in the Bigfoot research field. Here's how I got involved in the Bigfoot research field. We attend, at least I attend on a regular basis, the Tri-County UFO Study Groups in Alliance, Ohio, and they're hosted by. Oh yeah, I know. They're hosted by Jim Rastetter and Paul Razik. Well, yeah, that's who they're hosted by. He says, yeah, I know. I've been involved with those folks for a long time. I said, okay, cool. That's one way we found out about you, because I purchased one of the softcover books that was available up there because I wanted to read about it and I wanted to add it to my library. So he's like, all right. So we're sitting there, not one, not two, but approximately 3 hours. And he says, sometimes some things are better off showing hard physical evidence than what they are just telling you about what happened. So he says, let me go get a couple of boxes. I'll be right back. So he goes outside. He comes back in 10, 15 minutes later, and Mark and I are sitting there like twiddling our thumbs. What do we do now? What's he after? Is he going after one of these creatures he has hidden in the basement or what? I don't know. Could have been one of the aliens that was there on the property too, but who knows? So he comes back around into the house, and he comes in and it was 2, if not 3 boxes of plaster casts.
Oh,
both of them. They all had the plaster castings in them, the original plaster castings from their own property. And he showed them to us, and he said, the majority of the tracks that we discovered were 3-toed. There were a couple 5-toed. There was a large 3-toed on the rock pile that the boy had found when this series of events began to take place. But he said the majority of them were 3-toed. I said, do you think that there's giant birds that fly around called blue heron, and there's they're called cranes. Is it possible that any of these were made by them? And he said, no, not a chance. No way, shape, or form. All right, whatever. So there are very few tracks that were a complete plaster cast of 14 inches in length, but there were a couple of them. So granted, there were apparently some 14-inch 3-toed tracks that were discovered, and they took plaster castings of them. We talked about the plaster castings. We talked about the various footprints that were discovered. We talked about people on top of the house all night shooting at these things, encountering these things.
Because that became a pretty common thing, right? That there were members of the household on that farm that basically took shifts being on top of the roof of the house,
right,
day in and day out.
And, and if you were to ask me why did the creatures become drawn to that area, I have no idea. I know across the street from where the property was, there was a large soybean field or whatever produce the farmer decided to plant that year. But there was a large soybean field at that time. I also read in part of the booklet was that during June of that year, a gas line had been put through the area, and they had cut some virgin forest down to put this gas line in. Did that have anything to do with the paranormal coming about because they were upset because the forest was cut down? I have no idea. Couldn't tell you. But anyway, so we're looking at these plaster castings, and then he comes up with this piece of these two pieces of parachute cord, and I'm like, are these the parachute? Is this the parachute cord that you guys had the rabbits tied to that you used as bait to see if the creature would try to take them? He said, yeah. Now, I don't know what the maximum weight allowance is for parachute cord. You're jumping from a plane how many thousands of feet above the ground? It's got to hold up.
According,
they're going to have lawsuits left, right, and every which way but loose because they're defective.
Yeah. So according to what was written in the book, they were 1,200 pound test paracord.
Okay, I couldn't recall that part, but that's 1,200 pounds. That's quite a bit. So he pulls out this parachute cord, and these things, this cord is snapped in half. Snapped in half. It's not cut. It's not burnt. It is literally snapped in half. You can see the fray on both pieces of the cord. Now, my first question is, what has the ability to take a parachute cord with a rabbit tied to it on top of every other thing else and snap it in half? No idea. Okay, so that's impressive enough as it is. So, yeah, so we've looked at the parachute cord, and then he starts showing us photographs from I believe they were from a Polaroid camera of lights in the dark. Okay, what's this? Well, these are the lights in the dark that the Bigfoot creatures were holding. I said, do what? And he said, yeah, there were creatures out there that had lights that they were holding, that they were using. And by this time, I'm like, all right, well, it's no wonder I can't find one of them. If they use lights, they can find me as easy as I can find them. I'm done.
Now you saw the photographs, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So in the book, there is a crude sketch, I guess you'd say, of a dark figure in the field, with some kind of illuminated object in its hand.
Right.
So, like it's in the picture, the drawn picture in the book, it's almost akin to like someone holding a flashlight. Like there was a source of light that was in their hand and the beam was projecting out. Is that what the photographs looked like as well? Well,
the photograph did not show the dark form. It just showed It was all dark with the exception of the one small dot in the middle of it or whatever part of the photo. And that was allegedly the light that was being projected from the flashlight from the black form in the field or in the woodline or wherever it was located.
Okay.
But that's, yeah, you're right. That's on page 12, black forms and phantom flashlights.
Yeah.
So he showed me these photos, and I mean, according to the photos here again, he's got proof that there's some kind of a light being projected by something out there in the field, or in the woodline, but who or whatever it was that was responsible for it is anybody's guess. But if there's black forms, I don't know. I could dress like a baseball umpire and have all black on or dark clothes, and you know what I'm saying. I could have a dark form myself, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not saying this stuff is just made up BS, but I'm from Columbus, Ohio, but I use the attitude I'm from Missouri, the show me state. You got to prove to me what you're showing is more than 50% likely paranormal or associated with what you're talking about. That's all there is to it. I don't drink the Kool-Aid like they did in Jonestown.
Yeah.
I've got to be proven to that this stuff took place. So he showed us he may have, well, no, he didn't may have, he did have cassette tape after cassette tape after cassette tape of incidents as they took place in the field.
Okay,
you can hear gunshots, you can hear people screaming, you can hear people talking, and then all of a sudden, all Hades breaks loose again. And
so it wasn't just recorded conversations with people who were eyewitnesses.
These were in the field recordings as it took place, and that's one of the things I've always preached to the people that have done research with me in the field. I've preached and preached and preached to people that go with me in the field. You better have a tape recorder. You better make sure that it's recording the minute you step out of my car, because if you don't, and you hear a noise off in a distance when you're about 100 yards away from me checking someplace else out, and you don't have a recording, I'm going to look at you and say, did you get it on tape? And if you say no, well, I'm going to find the nearest strip pond and push you in. That should be, that and a camera or a camcorder should be the first two things that you have on your person when you get out of a vehicle to do research. Because if you don't, why are you out there for a joyride?
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, you're wasting my time, and most of all, you're wasting your time. But anyway, so these recordings, yes, they absolutely were made when the incidents were taking place. Now, jump ahead to one evening when we had gone to Jim Rastitter's house after one of the Tri-County UFO meetings. Jim says, I've got something for you that you might like to hear. Oh, all right. Well, what is it? He goes to the basement. He comes back up a few minutes later, and he's got, if I remember correctly, it was at least 12 one-hour audio cassettes. Now, they weren't the originals, but they were first-generation copies off of the originals. He said, here's 12 hours of recordings from Rome, Ohio.
Really?
No kidding. I said, what would you like me to do with these, Jim? He said, well, you can borrow them and listen to them at your leisure, and then when you're done with them, bring them back. Unfortunately, I wasn't kind of sneaky and made a copy of them, but I did listen to them, and I want to tell you one thing. As I'm sitting here at my desk right now, if all of those incidents on those tape recordings were legitimate and connected to Bigfoot, there's no reason that you're going to find it, because it's far and beyond anything that most people can comprehend in their daily life. There is nothing on the face of the earth that's going to be able to discover one of these creatures in a flesh and blood form, lie it on a table for an anthropologist to dissect and investigate piece by piece, and then turn it in along with a paper and give it a name. If that stuff was honest to goodness, legitimate, you're basically just beating your head up against a brick wall, and you're not going to get anywhere, because this stuff was bizarre.
All right, give me some of the things that stood out to you as being the most batshit crazy.
Well, the one thing was when they were at the property, at the residence, and they were talking to the residents, and they were trying to convince the investigators that were there with the audio cassette recorders that, well, not only do we have Bigfoot and possible UFO and aliens out there, our house may not only be possessed, but we may be possessed as well. Oh, okay. Well,
The family related that?
Oh, yeah. There's one or two individuals that were related in the family that claim to have been possessed by whatever. So they said, well, how do you expect to prove to us that some really weird stuff is going on in this house? Now we're going from paranormal Bigfoot stuff to paranormal ghosts.
Yeah.
Okay, hauntings, possessions. Okay, so let's try this experiment, shall we? The one guy that was supposedly, or the one family member, I don't remember if it was a guy or a girl, who supposedly had strange things going on, that she might have been possessed or whatever. They called her up, didn't call her on the phone, but they said, hey, come here, so-and-so. All right, let's try that experiment again and see if it'll work. Oh, okay. So what experiment you talking about there, folks? Well, let's just put it to you this way. You know how you cup your palm and you can put a little bit of water in your palm and it'll hold there like a little swimming pool until you tip it and it falls out of your palm? Sure, no problem. Well, the only problem is when we do that to this person, the water goes through the hand. Say what? No, it goes through the hand, not out of the hand. It goes through the hand. Now, as I'm sitting here, this is the stuff that was on the cassette recordings. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what I heard with my own ears on these recordings. And they tried the experiment when the recorder was going, and it happened that way. And you should have heard the reaction of the researchers when they were there. It was like there was no comprehensible verbal way of expressing what the heck, And so
Jesus.
This stuff was on those cassettes, and this stuff was very bizarre.
Now, did I understand you correctly when you said that you did not make copies of this, or you did make copies of this?
Did not.
Okay.
I wish I had, but no, I did not.
Have you, in all these years, have you ever heard of these tapes resurfacing anywhere?
No, I have not. There was one gentleman, Jim Raster, that had a copy of them. I'm wanting to say there might have been another fellow by the name of Jim Carnes. He lived up, I don't know if it was in the Ravenna area or Youngstown area, up in that part of the state somewhere, that may have had a copy of them, because I believe he went up to Rome once or twice with Rastetter. But other than that, those might have been the only two people that I know, or that I recall, that had a copy of those audio cassettes. Unfortunately, Jim Rastetter passed away in 1993, and his wife passed away, I don't know how long ago. It was after the year 2000, but before the year 2020. I looked up her obituary not too long ago. And also, unfortunately, Dennis Pilichis passed away in 2022.
Yeah,
so he's no longer around. So, it's unfortunate, because so much time and footwork and resources were put into going up there on a regular basis and trying to figure out what in Sam Hill was going on. And I think Dr. Berthold Schwartz is deceased.
Yeah, I believe so.
I know that Rastetter, Carnes, Paul Rozick, who may have been up there a couple of times. He was the co-chairman of the Tri-County UFO Study Group. He passed away a few years ago, so he's no longer around. So it's very unfortunate that one by one, these resources that were there firsthand, that had firsthand knowledge of this stuff, are no longer here. And even if they are, how do we get a hold of them?
Yeah.
Where are they at?
To your knowledge, Night Siege, the book by Dennis, that is pretty much the only published account of, except for a few a few police reports that were officially made, and some local newspaper reports that a paragraph or two here and there that were actually the only things that were ever publicly made known about this series of events. Correct?
Yeah, that's about it. I don't even know if Pilichis even showed up at one of the Tri-County UFO Study Group meetings and talked about the stuff in person. I know when I started going up there in October of '84, that was like 2 months after I started investigating Bigfoot on a very serious basis. Mm-hmm. Myself and a gentleman by the name of Tom Archer, who was formerly of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, we went up there, and he said, I know a group we can go to. They might have some new Bigfoot info. And I said, okay, let's go. So we drove up, and we met Rastetter, met Rossi, met Carnes, Bob Garfield, Joe Turner. People that are involved in that group that might happen to hear this know who those folks were. But regarding your original statement of documentation, there were one or two newspaper articles that I know of that were written about the incidents, very small blurbs, and this Night Siege booklet, and that was, to my knowledge, that was it.
I mean, it's frustrating because it's it's so local to me that I would love to be able to get into the area and try to find, but like you're saying, the majority of these people that were all involved are deceased, and any trail to where these tapes or any other field notes would be is anybody's guess. It'd be a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, that's correct.
When you started investigating this event, you came at it more from the perspective of, because of you heard of the Bigfoot connection to it. Do you know at any time were ufologists at all involved with receiving like similar information from this area? Only, at times, even nowadays, I mean, UFOs are UFOs. Bigfoot is Bigfoot. There are people that don't seem to mind having the conversation that they could be intertwined some way. But for the most part, they're two separate completely. The UFOers don't want to talk about Bigfoot, and the Bigfooters don't want to talk about UFOs. I think it's starting to mellow some now.
It probably is, due to the fact that you've got the internet and there's so much stuff on the internet, you just can't help but run across the information.
But I got to go back to, again, this was 1981, and I don't know of any other stories that really combine all of the elements that are in the field notes from Night Siege. They put check marks in so many different boxes for all of these different high strangeness, and then you bring up hearing on audio that the family had members that thought that they were even possessed, and I don't even know that there was any mention of that in Night Siege.
I don't think there was.
So that adds completely different context to all of this.
Yeah.
What did he make out of the multiple entities? Being three-toed, being five-toed. I know at one point there were some tracks that were found that were five-toed, I believe. But around each one of the prints that were found, the wheat or the grass that was around it were swirled almost in the fashion like you would expect to see something from a crop circle around the feet. Like there was some kind of spinning vortex of wind or whatever that knocked everything down concentrically around the footprints. I mean, what were those conversations like with this gentleman?
What I can recall of it was that he was just basically he was there because it was close to his own property. He was a paranormal investigator, UFO Bigfoot. Um, and he went out there to see what was going on, and kind of, as the old saying goes, he got stuck between a rock and a hard place. He was literally caught in the middle of it several times. I think his opinion, I'm fairly certain I could say that his opinion, what I gathered of conversation with him, would be that it was UFO connected without a doubt, due to the fact that the strange lights in the sky and the entities with beams of light that look like flashlights and things of that sort. I'm pretty sure that he was convinced that it was UFO connected. I mean, what other reason is there that you can't find a Sasquatch creature that's been shot at with a shotgun at relatively close range and there's no evidence whatsoever left behind? I mean, it would kind of be akin to Scotty beaming up Kirk off of an alien planet.
Yeah.
Where's it going? How do you explain that? If I've always been of the opinion that this thing is a flesh and blood entity, and I still believe that is the case, flesh and blood. But I got to tell you, it's
while it's here.
While it's here, yeah. I mean, and then once it gets beamed up on the Jupiter 2 or whatever, it becomes something else.
So, what did this whole thing do to? I mean, because you pretty much got to look behind the curtain, where with the Great Oz, right? So you got to see behind the curtain with the guy who actually was on site during these experiences and recorded them. So your early years of Bigfoot research were just that, for the most part. You had an interest in UFOs, but you were primarily a Bigfoot researcher, correct? What did that do to, was there a paradigm shift at this point?
The skeptic in my mind kept telling me these guys are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They've got to be misinterpreting something along the line, and all these people cannot be. This stuff just can't be going on the way they're saying it's going on. Mm-hmm. There's no way, shape, or form. I'm a physical flesh and blood believer, and these guys are telling it on audio cassette tape and also in this publication that, hey, folks, it's not a flesh and blood creature. I don't know. I can understand why a lot of people believe more that UFOs and alien creatures exist and what they can Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. Because it's easy to dismiss a light in the sky that just zipped over the top of your head and then went into outer space. And, hey, there was a UFO, must have been little green men from Mars. And by the way, there it goes. So they exist because I just saw it disappear in 15 seconds while I was watching it. But on the other hand, you talk to people like Renee DeHinden, John Green, Grover Krantz, and others that have seen not scores, not dozens, hundreds of tracks left one after the other in a dusty road in Bluff Creek, California, where Patterson shot the famous Patty film in October of '67. And here's your flesh and blood evidence because the dang thing just left a series of tracks that nobody can deny unless you're a diehard skeptic. So then you gotta, look, it would be a lot easier for me to say people that see UFOs have nothing better to do on the weekend. The date with their girlfriend was canceled because she wanted to go out with the girls and watch some kind of a movie or whatever. And so it's boring. And by the way, I just seen a light fly overhead. It was green and flashing red and blue and yellow and white and all this stuff. So and guess what, honey? I seen a UFO while you was out, on your pajama party with the girls. If the point is, if I hadn't seen what I've seen in my lifetime in 1976 and 1 year after that I am 99.999% sure didn't belong to anything that I'm aware of, then I would be a lot easier in saying these things are physical flesh and blood. Don't talk to me about UFO connections because I don't want to hear it. I've never seen a UFO. It's not happening. But when you see the UFO with your own eyes in 1976, hovering just above treetop level for more than what appeared to be 10 to 15 minutes. And it followed you for 4 miles, not fast, not slow, going the same speed as the car, and no more than treetop level high, following you for 4 miles into the country. Then it becomes a much more difficult thing to say they're not connected with UFOs. Now, I am not of the opinion at this point in time, as I sit here, that these things are connected to UFOs. There is no tangible, physical evidence that they are. There has never been video or photographs of a creature being beamed upon a UFO from the ground that I'm aware of. That being the case, taking the attitude that I'm from Missouri, the show me state, it's not been shown to me. It's not connected. Plain and simple.
Now, I'm going to assume that description of the object that followed the car, that was an experience that you actually had, correct?
Yes, unfortunately. But that's what got me into the Bigfoot stuff, because of the fact that was in the summer of 76. There were 9 or 10 family members who were standing there together watching this thing just above treetop level, hovering there without making even the whisper of a noise. You could see lights on the top of it. You could see lights on the bottom of it. You could see what appeared to be a row of windows with lights on the inside of it. Then it disappears in the flash of a light. I don't mean that there was literally a flash of light, but 1 second it's there and the next second it's gone.
Do you recall a shape to it?
Oh, I mentioned Jupiter 2 earlier, like Lost in Space.
Yeah.
Bingo. Huh. You can't make this stuff up. I was put in the wrong place at the wrong time, Jack. There it is. I know what I seen, and my mom even refers to that incident from time to time out of the blue.
Does she really?
Oh, yeah. So it happened. We know what we observed. But guess what? There was no beam of light that either picked up or dropped the Bigfoot out of that spacecraft that night that we know of. So I can't say that they're connected.
Right.
It's, it might sound like that I take a very simplistic viewpoint on whether or not something like that is tied together, but what else are you supposed to do? Don't complicate things more so than what they are already by trying to make it more bizarre or more complicated.
Well, the only other thing that really, like this entire series of events, the only thing that to my mind comes even close are when you take into consideration the vast number of things that were recorded by Bigelow and the now current owner of Skinwalker Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the part of, spiritual manifestation or demonic infestation, the complete weird overarching inclusion of like nearly all high strangeness in this one thing. And I keep going back to 1981. I don't think people had the brain power or the I don't want to say the intelligence, but the ingenuity to weave all these things together back then. Now we have all the different AI, and you got people making videos that show a Bigfoot running through the forest and getting chased by a UFO and all that. I mean, now I understand it, but for that time, for 81, that's a pretty significant departure from a normal paranormal experience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you did not have the resources back then, nor did you have the high-speed communication devices like you have with instant text messaging or Facebook messaging or email or whatever. I mean, other than some big-time companies manufacturing IBM computers or whatever. You just didn't you didn't have it. And that's one of the things that's very interesting about this. What our downfall as a society, in my opinion, is the AI and things of that sort. From here on out, I mean, unless you're an absolute expert, you're not going to be able to look at anything and say, well, that could be or could not be.
No, for people that are like you and I, and our interest in this, and it removes all credibility. You'll spend more time trying to figure out if something was AI generated than you would trying to figure out if this was hoaxed, or how they filmed it. It's a terrible thing. I understand that it's powerful and it can be used for good, but right now, at least in this realm, I don't see any good coming of it.
Roger Patterson shot the footage October 20th of 1967 with a 16 millimeter sound movie camera.
Yeah.
And in my basement right now, I have a 35 millimeter Shannon single lens reflection SLR camera. So my proposal is, if you want to get real serious, and if you actually happen to know where there's a crew of Sasquatches and you want to get some good photos of them, and you want to be taken serious about it, a negative does not lie.
Right. Don't leave it up to a digital image.
Right. Start going back to the negative film. You're not going to get an instant look at it on your viewfinder, but you're going to have a much better chance of being taken very seriously and having it considered legitimate as compared to what digital is, or AI, or anything like that.
That's a very interesting point, because I wanted to go back to you at your meeting with Pilichis. In the book, he said several times that there were a number of color photographs that were taken during their time spent there. At the time when you were with him, did he come forward with any other photographic evidence of things that you could tell appeared to be odd?
He may have, but it's been so long ago that I just don't recall. The one photo in particular that I recall was that photo of, it looked like it was just somebody shooting a Polaroid camera into the darkness.
Yeah.
With the exception of the beam of light, or the light and the light source that was in the photo at some point, someplace in the photo. I don't know what it was, where it was at, I recall. But that's the only thing that I can remember. He showed me, I think he showed photographs of several of the footprints, but no photos of something else that could be considered to be evidence of a Sasquatch or a UFO or anything of that sort.
Well, in the book, I'm grateful that it's still available to get your hands on, but the terrible quality of the footprints, the three-toed footprints found at Rock Creek. I mean, I could be looking at anything here.
Right. In fact, I'm looking at those photos as you speak.
I mean, they look like they were at one time probably a decent photograph, then they were put onto a photocopier, sent through a fax machine, and then sent to a printer who duplicated it. And I mean, they're god awful. It looks like chalk drawings on a gravel road. And that's about all you can glean off of it. But it sure would have been interesting to be able to take a look through that box of his stuff that he had. That was.
I would like to know what happened to all the stuff that he had. Because I don't know. Obviously both of his parents had been deceased when he passed.
Yeah.
And I don't recall any conversation that he had any kids, and I don't recall any conversation that he was ever married. So what happened to the material that was in the boxes that were in the house at Rome, Ohio back in 1986?
Yeah.
If anybody knows, let us know, because that would be like a veritable gold mine to find that stuff and to be able to go through it and examine it again.
At any
That
point,
would,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that would just open up a new can of worms on the Rock Creek and Rome, Ohio incidents. And don't you find it kind of peculiar? Think about this for just a minute. Into a mind where sound and sight have no meaning whatsoever. You listen to this stuff. The first incident that was reported in the book, do you recall where it took place? Guess where the last incident took place?
Rock Creek?
Creek.
Really?
Yes. Now, why did the first one take place during June of 81 in Rock Creek? Then the events took place near the house, near Rome. And then the last thing that took place during 1981 that we're aware of, October 11th, was the footprint on the dirt pile
right
near Rock Creek.
That's where the kid was sitting, correct?
That's where the kid is stooped down looking at the camera. Yeah, he's got a yardstick sitting there beside the footprint. Yeah. But yeah, that's right. So what's so special about Rock Creek? And that's one thing that somebody has got to ask or answer, if at all possible, the question of why did it start in the vicinity of Rock Creek and why did it end in the vicinity of Rock Creek? What's the connection? If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, wasn't there a set of railroad tracks that went through that vicinity?
Yes.
Am I remembering?
I believe the trackway was still there, but the tracks had been removed, I believe.
Okay. So go to the summer of 1985 and take a look at railroad tracks that went down through New Cumberstown and down through the Post Boyd Tunnel. And those tracks had been removed, but there were a slew of tracks, footprints discovered adjacent to those railroad tracks, that railroad bed, as it led toward the Post Boyd Tunnel, just about 2 miles south of New Cumberstown. And incidents took place there. A lot of times, animals, if they're in a heavily forested area or they have a lot of thickets or whatever they got to go through, or, okay, let's say people. I've done it a number of times myself. What course of a path am I going to take in the forest that's the easiest course of path that I don't want to deal with the multiflora rose bushes and everything else like that? It's
the path of least resistance.
A path. Yeah. A trail.
Yep.
So, maybe these things were discovered along the railroad track bed in June and again in October around the Rock Creek area because it was the easiest trail to navigate.
This takes me back to, I think you and I had either discussed this prior to recording the last time, or we may have touched on it while we were recording. My experience, I didn't see it. I don't know what it was. All I know is that in typical fashion of being paced out of the woods, that's essentially what happened. And anybody who's listened to this show any number of times I've revisited that multiple times. The one thing that I don't know that I've ever touched on is during the event that I had take place, there was a clear cut because there was a pipeline that had gone through that area and crossed the property that I was able to hunt. There was a gas pipeline that had been put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a gas pipeline that was being put in 1981 in the story, the events in Rome.
Yeah.
So again, it's a path of least resistance. It's a natural corridor. If animals were looking to find an easy way from one place to another, it certainly makes sense that they would follow that.
Right.
And that pipeline, in my experience, directly intersected with the area that I had my pacing out of the woods.
Huh. That's a lot of times there were encounters that took place down there along those railroad tracks just outside of New Cumberstown. Um, Even myself and another guy, Tom Archer, during this late summer of '85, feel as if we were being paced. Something was inside the wood line, and we caught on to the fact that it was walking along with us. So he used a hand motion to get us to stop, and we stopped, and we could hear 2 or 3 more steps that sounded bipedal, and then it stopped. And we didn't hear it again until, after we continued to walk. So you never know what's around you.
It's a truly bizarre story. So after your 3 hours with that gentleman, Dennis Pilichis, what was your takeaway? Like, you got in the car and you and the wannabe rocker Mark Francis, right?
Right.
What was, I guess, what was his reaction to what he was hearing while you guys were there? And what was your conversation like when you got in the car and started heading home?
What I can remember, his reaction was pretty much the same as mine. It would have been, we looked at each other and thought, did we just hear what we heard? Did we just see what we seen? Did we just actually get fortunate enough that we were able to talk to Pilichis in person? That's one of those situations where, to answer your question, what can you say about it? I mean, you've talked to the guy who was number one in investigations at the property within a few miles of his residence, within a few miles of where you're sitting, literally, when you were talking to him, within a few miles of there. And, what? All you can think about is, what now? Was he pulling our legs just to try and see how far we would go with this? But then on the other hand, he's telling us the same stories, the same encounters, the same accounts that we've heard at the Tri-County UFO Study Group from various people who have knowledge of the incidents or the case, or so, I mean, like, I guess the only thing I could say is, again, hindsight being 2020, is that I wish I would have had a tape recorder to record the conversation. And I think somewhere in my archives, and I would have to look it up, and if you knew how vast my archives were in the basement, my reluctance as to digging into stuff. But somewhere I've got to have some type of photographs that I may have taken of some of the stuff that Pilichis had in his possession with his blessings. I'm fairly certain I took a photograph of the parachute cord, and I think I may have, and don't hold me to it, but I may have taken a photo, and this is with 35 millimeter again, may have taken a photo of the photo that he showed us of the light in the field in the darkness.
Did you happen to take photos of any of the casts?
Oh, I probably did, but I would just have to look and see where they're at and things of that sort. But yeah, I really wish that I would have asked permission to get copies of the audio cassettes, and had recorded Pilichis myself on a tape recorder.
How did he describe the people that lived on the farm? And I guess, and you don't have to answer this to the listeners, but were you ever made aware of the family name of the people, the farm, the homestead?
I was, but I don't recall what it was offhand. and I was made aware of the name of the road as well. And I don't know that it's mentioned in the publication. I don't think that it is,
I
but I
don't
may be
believe it is.
wrong.
And they refer to him as Robert S., I think.
I believe that's what it was. Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, I know that the last name was mentioned to me a couple of times, and I know the name of the road was mentioned to me a couple of times. But then again, here again, hindsight's 2020. You learn from experience that the most important thing to do is take notes, take notes, take notes.
Did he indicate anything? Like, I mean, obviously there was some high strangeness with a couple of the people that lived there as well, the family members. But I mean, for the most part, did he indicate that these were pretty level-headed, normal, salt of the earth people and had no reason?
This is, yeah. I mean, this was a family who, in May of 1981, was going about their daily routine as if they were the average, typical family off the street. They didn't want publicity or notoriety or anything to that effect, as far as I'm aware, and as far as I've been told. They just happened to be thrust into this situation where strange, bizarre activity starts taking place on their property. So they were average Joe Schmo from Kokomo people that had no interest whatsoever in fame or notoriety. That's why they didn't have a lot of people out there investigating this stuff as it was going on.
I got one more question for you, and I think we can call this good. So at the time when you had this conversation with Pilichis, and you had formed an opinion of the things that he had told you and the things that you were made aware of, the legitimacy of the tapes and all these things, taking into consideration all of the different aspects of the high strangeness that was taking place there. Now reflecting on that 40 years later, how has that changed your view of the enigma of Sasquatch, Bigfoot?
Well,
I know that's a big one. I know it.
It is a big one, but it's a simple answer. And I don't think it's really changed my opinion or my viewpoint at all. I'm a very bullheaded individual, as some people that know me very well will tell you. And my opinion is still that, it's a flesh and blood entity that leaves tracks. And that's as far as I can really say. And that's until I see some other kind of proof or evidence that says that it's connected with UFOs and Bigfoot is friends with ET. That's where I stand on the matter. My two UFO sightings, one in 1976 and the other, I don't recall what the year was, early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Those are entirely separate incidents to the Bigfoot phenomena. And I say that because of the fact that those took place not within hours or days of Bigfoot activity taking place in the same geographical location, but they took place months or years later, in areas where months or years later, Bigfoot activity may have taken place within a certain geographical location where the UFO sighting took place. Now, the one UFO sighting took place was here in town. It was me and another guy, and that was in the late 90s. And of course, the first one in 76 was out in the country, about 4 miles outside of New Comerstown. So that's, I separate the two with what information I have on them. But I don't think that my opinion has really changed that much as to what Bigfoot could be. One day, maybe we'll find out what's going on. But, if there's anyone that's listening that was directly associated with the Rome, Ohio incidents as they took place, or if you know any first or secondhand information about it, get a hold of me. I'm happy to talk to you, and I'm also happy to keep you anonymous.
Yeah, and the same goes for me. You can get, if you need to, you can get a hold of me, and I can get information passed on to Don, or at least put you in contact with him about that.
Yeah, because I can't help but think there's more out there about this that hasn't been talked about because it's in somebody's file folder or it's a cassette tape that hasn't been listened to. And I'll be quite honest about it. Not too long after I heard the incident on the cassette tapes about the possible possession with the water in the hand experiment,
mm-hmm.
I quit listening to them. That was enough for me.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, so, okay, so, what else? What else is going to be talked about on these tapes? I didn't listen to all 12 tapes. I didn't listen to all 12 hours. And what I got listened to, and that was on the second or third tape, that was enough. That was enough. If that's what these things really are, then there's no sense in investigating them any further, because there's no way you're going to find tangible evidence that proves that they exist. And science requires a body or the majority of a body to prove that it exists. I asked Dr. Grover Krantz, sitting in Vancouver, BC at the planetarium in 1997 at the Sasquatch Symposium, and I knew him before that, but I asked him, I said, Grover, just, flat out, tell me, what do you need to prove that Bigfoot exists? And he told me on the phone before I went out there in 97. He also told me this in person. He said, science requires a body. And if science cannot get a body, it requires the majority or the very important pieces of a body. What are the important pieces? Those are the extremities. And those extremities are both hands, both feet, and the head. If you can stomach getting them, collecting them, and then get out of there with your life, get it to the nearest scientist and keep it as low-key as possible.
Don Keating, thank you so much for your insight into this utterly weird Northern Ohio creature invasion. The book, again, is Night Siege, The Northern Ohio UFO Creature Invasion by Dennis Pilichis. You've been listening to Don Keating, who is a renowned researcher in the topic of Bigfoot and UFO in Ohio. I appreciate it, sir. It's always great talking to you. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on, and everyone should keep an open mind. The answer is out there somewhere. It just takes a matter of luck and finding it.
It's out there. It definitely is. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Good night.